Mayor Byvelds.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the 72nd meeting of 7th Council Municipality South Dundas. We're calling this special meeting to discuss one particular item, and that item being the engineering report that we asked for at our last council meeting concerning Dutch Meadows pumping station and cost concerns. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'll have a roll call, please. Mr. Clerk, Deputy Clerk.
Sure. Mayor Byvelds.
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Gardner.
Here.
Councillor Lewis.
Here.
Councillor Mellon.
Oh.
And Councillor Well.
Here.
Thank you.
Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof this morning? Seeing none, we'll move into the discussions items, and I'll welcome back Josh Eman and Francois to the council table to discuss their update on the costing of the pump station for Dutch Meadows. Josh, Francois, take it away, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. We provide following our council meeting on Monday. We went back to the design team to apply council's direction in terms of looking at reducing the scope and or allowance for future growth for the project, and to see how we can get the costs down to what the 2018 cost estimate was. Council's direction was very clear. We prepared a technical memorandum that details kind of the history of the project leading up to today, and I don't know if you want me to go through it in detail, but essentially what we wanted to remind council was that in 2018, when we did our cost estimate at that time, the location of the pump station hadn't been finalized yet by the developers. The depth of the pumping station wasn't finalized yet. The location-specific soil investigations weren't completed to the proposed station depth, and then which we obviously had to do once the location had been finalized. And then a detailed topographic survey wasn't completed, and the design had not commenced at that time. So it was definitely a Class D estimate, and council's direction was for us to sharpen our pencils and see what we can come up with. We're not constructing the project, obviously. We have no control over what the contractor's costing would be, so instead that being said, I definitely understand council's frustration with where these numbers have gone over the years. So what EBB had done, and we tasked our design team, and we met with the township staff to see what kind of items we can change or modify in the design to follow council's direction to simplify the design and reduce the amount of growth that we're accounting for, and just try to get the project down as close as we can to cost without impacting the longevity or quality and functionality of the pump station. Like one of the things I've learned over my career is if we make some really rash decisions to get the station down, to the number exactly we're looking for, and delete something that we find out is critical to the project, we're going to end up paying for it either in call outs or replacement parts in a few years or something like that. So we were really trying to task the design team to make these changes more focusing on the allowance for growth and the other directions that we were given by council, and not jeopardizing the quality of the end product. So just from our discussion at last council meeting and some items that we discussed at the meeting with staff and municipal staff and the design team, we talked about a number of items, and I've sort of summarized the key points that we've talked about, both from council and from our team. The first being future growth. I would actually believe, as you, Mr. Mayor, you're saying, if we made the decision to reduce the catchment area that this pumping station is being designed for just to Dutch Meadows alone and no allowance for future growth, what's the impact on the cost of the wet well? Well, in fact, at last council meeting that we did back in March, we talked about the pumping station depth in like the different depths that we could have the developer put the sewer in to allow for future growth to the west and to the north. And at that time, council's direction was to put the sewer in at the shallowest of the three options that we presented. And so by putting that depth, the sewer at that depth that we were directed, the pumping station depth is actually now being influenced by the condominium development, the development to the south. So that low area that Dutch Meadows is is servicing is actually the one dictating the depth of the pump station. And then secondly, in terms of the cross-sectional area of the wet well, we're using VFD drives, and therefore there's no requirement for us to create a certain volume of storage in the wet well, which means the actual size of the wet well doesn't really get impacted by the catchment area. So I guess, long story short, there's no real savings in the wet well to be had by reducing the future growth area. The second point was the VFDs and three-phase pumps. We're definitely spending more money to convert the pumps to VFDs. There's, there are electronic devices that are controlling the speeds of the pump, and we could save some money by going what we call cross-the-line starters. So it's just like a switch. You flip the switch, and the pumps turn on. You close the switch, or you turn off the switch. The pumps turn off. So by doing that, because there's only single-phase power available to us at the area, that would require that we go to single-phase pumps. We had a discussion, and I was, hemming and hawing about this. I wasn't totally comfortable with it because we've always been told by suppliers that, especially for these smaller sewage pumps where the horsepowers aren't quite as high as some of these bigger ones, like 25, 30 horse. What happens is if you get a solid that when your pump stops and the solid's sort of in the volume of the pump, the next time you go to start up, that starting torque's just not there to cut that solid or push that solid back into the pump. So you end up getting a lot of blockages. So I was trying to decide whether or not this was a good one to remove. And I spoke to Dennis, and I was really thankful for his real world input, we'd call it, because in Williamsburg, they were going through the same process where they had single phase pumps that they switched to three phase. And the reason why they did it was because they're getting a lot of blockages, a lot of problems with the pumps. And Dennis, you said your call-ins went from like multiple times a month to once a month maximum kind of thing.
Yeah, that's correct. So like it was kind of random, but yeah, whenever there was a buildup or heavy flows back in Williamsburg, we would the pump, when it would trip out on us, and then we'd have to go back and lift up the pump and clean it out and drop it back down. Since we did the upgrade back in Williamsburg, the VFDs, we haven't had any calls on that issue at all.
So once we got that input from staff, that solidified our decision that we didn't think it was a good idea to try to save some money by simplifying that pump power. The other item we talked about was building. We had allowed for an allowance to create like a small building to house all the electrical equipment. And after discussion, that was one that we said, we could live without. There's a lot of examples of stations that don't have any buildings at all. And as Mr. Mayor, you pointed out, like they can get the pump tents. That's harder to say in the morning. Pump tents that you can go, how like those little temporary shelters that you put around the control panel. Like the ULC Hydro and Bell, they could look at something like that, or some other options as well. So we did take the building out of the estimate. SCADA integration, we discussed SCADA integration. There's a fair amount of money being spent there, like we presented in our last presentation to council. As Dennis pointed out again, you guys are going in that direction across the board for all of your stations currently. It'd be counterintuitive to not do that for this station. And additionally, by not including it, you're looking at extras or difficulties by adding it after the fact. So we concluded that that's one that we don't think we should compromise on at this time, because it would just cost more to do later kind of thing. And it's something that the township really wants. It helps with the operators' capabilities to manage and operate the stations, and it reduces callouts, which means reducing operational costs down the road. I guess we're still going here, but generators. We discussed generator at great length, and this is one that we would definitely highly recommend that the station has, at least in the ultimate situation. The generator that we were sizing at 50 kilowatts was sized for the ultimate scenario, like we're at build out. And so we were looking at reducing that generator size to what the council's direction was, which was Dutch Meadows only. So we looked at, and just to there was a lot of discussion about the sizing and how, the size was driving up the cost. So we gave two, in our estimate, or in our memo here, we gave two sizing scenarios, one for 15 kilowatts, which is the absolute bare minimum that you would need to run both pumps in parallel. And in fact, we wouldn't recommend it because you're literally right on you're redlining the generator to be struggling to operate based on the loads that we're calculating. And so we're just showing you that go up by 10 kilowatts to a 25, which is what we'd recommend. It's only $10,000 additional for that cost. So what we're told again is that the size of the generator, like how they come is there's a standard engine that they'd use, and then the alternator, the power source changes, up and down based on that one generator size or engine size. And so there's only a major increase in cost when your sizing gets high enough that it impacts the size of the motor. And the other thing I just wanted to point out as well is because we're using VFDs creates harmonics in the electrical system, which means that you have to derate your generators to allow for that harmonics that's just a factor of VFDs. So what we've done is we have shown the costing without a generator, and that's something that we could live without for sure under the next few years, and hopefully Dutch Meadows is built out in 3 or 4. I hope the developer well. I wish the developer well, but what we would do is kind of play on how that development is progressing, and then from there make a decision at future time. If we don't have the money for this generator now, that they can purchase it in future. So what we would recommend you do is you'd set it up for manual transfer, manual bypass switch, and a disconnect for a portable generator. Now, we don't have costing of the portable generator in our estimate, but we did show in the detailed breakdown what those costs would be. So, if we're looking at something that run both 5 horsepower pumps, a portable generator is about $36,000 if the township's looking to purchase one and not rent it. So we are saving some money there, and you can defer that cost to down the road if that's what the council's direction is. We talked about fall arrest and retrieval system. That was one where we had some fat in it, where we were buying all of the different components to be left at the station for fall arrest and retrieval. Dennis rightly so pointed out that they actually, the decision of having no building means that we'd have nowhere to store it. And then 2, they've already got all the equipment from another station, so that was an easy decision. We'll just go and put fall arrest davits in the at the station so that they can just come with their equipment, we'll drop it in, but not actually purchase it here. So that saves some money for us. Councillor Wells, I believe we talked quite a bit about shoring at our last council meeting, and we discussed this with the design team, and our experience is definitely that if we ignore it and leave it out in its entirety, there's definitely a risk to council that or to the township for a claim, where if they find that they need shoring and we haven't covered that, we're opening ourselves up to a risk. So how we recommend we proceed is that we give the contractor the option, saying, it is a large open field, as Councillor Wells pointed out. It's a large open field. We have a lot of room to work. So if they think they could do it with less expensively without shoring by making a large hole if the required slopes and some working platforms, then we would leave it up to the contractor to be creative in their bidding to bid it aggressively. But I definitely don't recommend we take it out altogether, because it's just passing on liability to the township. And then lastly, this time for real, bypass pumping and flow metering chamber. We talked about that as well, although that's definitely something we recommend, and I think municipal staff would like to have. It's something that we could live without for the short and immediate future as well. So if we're trying to bring that price down, we would say that that's something we can lead with and not affect the operation of the pumping station. So all that being said, our estimate did go down to to closer to $1.1 million, and that's excluding the backup generator. And so what we're recommending to council is that we get approval to proceed with that budget estimate. And what we would do is make the backup generator a provisional item, so because I think that would be the top of our let's call it sacrifices that have been made to get the cost of this project down. So what we would recommend is that we make that a provisional item, and if the pricing comes in where we want it to be or more aggressively than what we're budgeting, that we add that generator to the project as a provisional item. So that concludes our presentation. We did provide council some detailed breakdowns as it's attached to it, but I don't know from there, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions.
Any comments from staff first before we go to council? May start with Shannon and then Dennis.
No, the only comment I'll have is, we did sit down with EVB Engineering after our meeting on Monday last week to look at what items we could remove to bring this price down to a more acceptable level. We did go through some of the items that were on the original presentation as far as the meter pumping, the generator, the roof, all those types of projects. And we concluded that some of these items were a nice have, and that we can either A, remove them, or B, look at future costs down the road if we felt we needed these costs.
Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, no, we sat down. We sat down with Josh, and we tried to, save as much as we can on the items. Like there's a few items I would like to keep in place. Like I say, the SCADA's. I think like the callouts, we proved that it has dropped like significantly with the callouts, and the operators don't need to come to the facilities anymore. So they can answer a lot of the callouts right from home. So I think the SCADA issue is that's one that we should keep in play. And like I say, I think we tried to save as much as possible on the other items. And like if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them for you. But like I say, I think where we're at right now, I don't think we want to take any more out.
Okay, start with Deputy Mayor Gardner, please.
Thanks, Mayor Byvelds. No, it looks reasonable to me. I have with this project being a fairly large magnitude, do we have timelines associated with it? Because one thing that will blow the budget out of the water will be if we don't have timelines that kind of run alongside. Like Josh, have you worked like if we're talking about the ECAs or even hydro hookups or whatever, do we have, have we started work on that? Or I'm just worried, if there's backlogs or whatever the case may be, it's a tight budget, and I'd like it as low as possible. But sometimes these projects, if they, take longer than they should, it can up the budget a bit.
Yeah, no, fair question, Deputy Mayor Gardner. We're obviously some of these decisions that we're talking about impact the design. So we advanced the design, quite far. We were getting ready to go to tender by the end of the month is what we were targeting. So we kind of delayed a week a little bit here with some of these decisions. So we're probably talking about very early in the month of February to tender it. And once that happens, that's when we'll have that price locked down. It's also a great time to go out to tender, because the contractors are still looking to load up for their, their 2021 construction year. So they're still pretty hungry and looking for some projects to fill their coffers, I guess. So it's a good time to go out, and that's when we're targeting to go out to tenders early February. The ECA application, there is a potential for risks there as well. We can have a tender go out. But you're really supposed to have that ECA before you start construction by the letter of the law. I know there are some municipalities and clients that sometimes, we make that decision once we know, once we see when the parts are going to come in, and when the contractor's ready to start, we'll decide whether or not we want to take that risk or delay things. In terms of the actual construction duration, we are finding that COVID is affecting delaying a lot of the delivery of equipment for these projects. Things that are usually 6 to 8 weeks, or sometimes becoming 12 to 16 weeks, just because of COVID delays. So there is some delays there that we're experiencing, but I think that we would address that by making sure that the construction duration is long enough that they're not adding risk for liquidated damages to their tender price, influencing our project cost, kind of thing.
Okay. That's the only thing I worry about. I know our residents are excited about this project, and like everywhere else in SDNG, we had a pretty hot housing market, and people are looking at moving here. So sooner the better would be.
Yeah.
But that's good. I appreciate the work done on this by your firm, Josh, and our staff.
Thank you.
Councilor Wells?
Thank you, Mayor Vital. No, I think, Josh, you what I see in this report, I don't think we can get it any lower. The shoring, if a company decides to run with it, like with the open area, it's a possible another $100,000 savings there over. So yeah, overall, I think staff and you guys did the best you can. We got to realize this was 2 years ago, and the D-class estimate, which, like I said before, I'm not in favor of, but there's a lot of things there that these guys didn't have to actually even probably do a D-class estimate. So I think this is basically, it is where it is, and hopefully by getting it out early, it's going to, people are looking for work might come in low. I don't think there's anything like, I'm not sure what Swank's date, if they're planning on it. The only thing we would have to provide them would be a benchmark for the invert so they could actually start their buildings, right, Josh? Like, as long as they have their benchmark for that invert, they can go there. And so it's not going to hold them up, even if this takes the fall to get it done. As long as they have that, then they get their infrastructure in. So, but we don't want to be the ones holding them back. So I think we got to run with it because we already committed ourselves. So you guys did get it down over 300. So that's a good start. And maybe with the tendering process, it'll get lower. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Councilor Lewis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Josh, this is, to me, it's more of a realistic number. I understand the staff and your company has worked very hard to get it to where it is. I'm happy with this one. I think taking out what we had to take out is very satisfactory because I think it was more of a want than it was that we really needed. Josh, when we start this this construction, we will have a timeline on it.
Yes, Councillor. Yes, Councillor. We will have a timeline on it that we'll put out the tender. We'll say that when they're allowed to start construction, and then we'll say when the completion has to be done.
Okay, that sounds good. And like I understand from what we bid 2 years ago, like cost of living and everything goes up. So yeah, no, I'm very happy with this number. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Mellon?
Yes, all my questions have been answered as far as a completion date, so as long as it's in line with what Swank needs. I guess the control panel, Josh, they're weatherproof if we go with less of a building. Those control panels are all weatherproof and sealed, I take it?
Yes, they follow a NEMA. They call it a NEMA standard, Councilor Malone, and which means this would be called NEMA 4X. So in other words, it's capable of being in outside weather, pour grain on, you can spray with a hose even, and it's fine. It'd be virtually identical to the control panel that's outside the Morseburg wastewater treatment plant. There's a silver control panel there right outside the building, and it would be virtually identical to that one.
Okay. I guess the only area I see is the generator. As I read your report, Josh, it's a provisional item in there. If the price comes in low enough at, we can add and I agree that we should probably have the 25 kilowatt generator for not just an extra 10,000, but you've got that in as a provisional item if the numbers are low enough in the contract that comes in.
That's right. Yeah, like in the 1.1 million that we've shown, it does not include that generator. But what we're recommending is we would get council's direction to include it as provisionally. So in the event that it comes in at that budget, and we can't afford it, then we would exclude it. Where if it comes in lower, then we would add it to the contract.
Oh, okay. And I agree that we need a generator because I read in your report later that at maximum flow, we only have like 1 hour it's full and we're going to run into issues. but that's when the development is fully full, you know, it's done. And I'm reaching out here a little bit when you mentioned the fact that the portable generator cost is about 35,000. Maybe this is the farmer in me, but I mean, we have a generator here on the farm that that's more than 25 kilowatt. Now, I don't think it's going to cost, but it's a PTO tractor driven one. Would we give any thought that if, as far as I'm concerned, that generator can be deferred for a few years until, and use a portable one, buy a portable one. I know, okay, everybody just take a sec here, buy a portable one, and the resale value on them portable ones, we wouldn't lose a heck of a lot of money, because I don't think we need a permanent generator until at least phase 1 is done. I don't like the idea of having the cost of what it's going to cost us to put that 25 kilowatt generator in there, and it sit there and not be used for, really, realistically, during the construction period. It won't be utilized until probably, even if we have phase 1 done, we could have probably a full day before, with the power out, before we would run into an issue. I'm guessing at that, because at the minimum flow, it's about 6 hours. At the maximum flow, it's 1 hour. So at phase 1, I'm just thinking we could defer that cost later, possibly look at a portable generator. And at 35,000, I think that's a little high, but maybe I'm out to lunch here. It's been a few years since we bought the generator here for the farm, but I realize it's a PTO driven one, but we do have a tractor. If we are out of power for 6 hours or 8 hours, and we need to have a portable generator, that would be the only thing that I would see in this. I agree we need a generator. I just don't think we need to spend that kind of money up front, even if the savings are there. If it comes in around our budgeted amount, I just have a little bit of trouble with that generator sitting there. We won't be doing anything for a few years, but that's my only comment. Everything else, as far as I'm concerned, Josh, you guys have, whittled it down to the point that I don't think we can whittle anymore without having anything. So yeah, your comment on that generator, and I'll leave it up to the rest of council too. That's my only thought.
Thank you, Councillor Mullen. I guess first off, this generator we did actually get quotes for a trailer mounted generator, because these are quite large. Obviously, not something that Dennis, although I'm not questioning Dennis's strength at all, it is a pretty heavy unit. It's something that you have to connect to it's a trailer mounted generator with an engine. So, and this is right from this is a Generac, which they're good quality, but not I wouldn't say that they're the top of the line by any stretch. Not that I'm a big generator expert, but this is something that our electrical guy recommended, and that was the quote rate from them at 36 grand. But other than that, a couple things I'd say is, and again, Dennis, I'm not sure how you guys set things up, but with the permanent generators, there's an automatic transfer switch. So in fact, they would this thing starts, no operator intervention whatsoever. Some operational staff decide that they want to get an alarm just so that they know they're on backup power, and some don't even want to get an alarm because it's operating as intended, kind of thing. So I guess versus if we had a portable generator, it's a call out. It's someone going out, in the middle of the night, probably under a thunderstorm or something when it happens, to go and connect into a generator. So there's the costs that are involved with that over the long term. Now, that being said, I 100% agree with you that it's not something that's needed right away. We'll definitely have a lot of storage and a lot of response time until we get towards near the end of this development. So there's definitely something that could be deferred. But I would also definitely recommend that at some point you go to a permanent generator. In regards to doing it now or doing it later, like if we had the money, my recommendation would definitely still be to do it now, simply because nothing's going to get cheaper over time. It's continuing to, in cost will continue to increase. And there's no real risk to the generator itself. Like, it's set up to automatically turn on once a week, run for so many hours, and just to keep everything lubricated and in good shape. So I don't see there being any risk of degrading the generator if it's not if it takes a while for the subdivision to build out. But it is definitely, I guess in conclusion, it's definitely something we can defer, and that's why we talked about it today.
Okay, thank you. That's about all I have, Mayor Vitals. I think we've got where we need, well, the closest we're going to get.
Okay, I got a few things wrote down, some questions, some comment. So on the shelter, there's zero shelter on this in the document right now.
We actually carried $5,000 for like to create like kind of a 4-post little roof or something over top of it, similar to what the operational staff put at the Morrisburg plant. Excuse me, $2,000 is what we carried.
Okay. I'm not the construction expert on council, but you know, in my opinion, that's something that we could always do after if it becomes an issue. You know, as you said, we don't have anything at our main wastewater plant, and hopefully, you know, I think looking at a portable system or something like that might be something we need more as a universal tool in our toolbox to deal with others. On the gen set, I'm kind of in the same line as Councillor Mellon and yourself. Yeah, we're going to need it someday. You also have to keep in mind two things on a permanent gen set. A, it needs periodic maintenance, which I'm sure is probably fairly costly on its own, because you have to bring in a specialty technician from the company, and they'll do the oil change and run the whole thing and do all the computer things, because they're all run by computers these days, and I know that from farming. The other issue that may occur, and it's just something that came up because you had mentioned about it operating once a week, is that from my see of the plans, there's some housing fairly close to the station, and a part of our permanent genset running once a week may cause some issues with some of the neighbors. Is that a possibility?
So this generator, Mr. Mayor, is we specified to follow the most stringent silencing capability, so it's fully enclosed, and it's a hospital grade level silencer, so it's much quieter than what you would be experiencing on the farm, for example. That being so, these things run and they're relatively quiet, and we would be picking the location of the generator to have the least impact on the neighboring residents.
Okay. The other thing that I had questioned within the scope of the work, and maybe this is something that I don't know if it was talked about at staff level, was the inclusion of the water main coming across underneath County Road 2 as part of this contract, and whether we put it as part of this contract or do it as a separate works. And you had mentioned about putting it together. Was there any discussion of making it provisional, and then if the price is right, we can have them do it? If the price seems exorbitant, we can look into doing it ourselves via a separate contractor.
We can definitely make it provisional, Mr. Mayor, and check the pricing on it for sure.
I don't disagree with you. They're on site, and if they have the equipment to do so, do so. But if they're adding it onto their contract, then that's something maybe. And we've had work done, I know, on smaller lines going underneath County Road 2 now. It's just going up to a larger size, and we are committed to it. But it's a separate cost item when we look at the connection fees and how we're going to eventually recoup dollars to help pay for this pumping station. So money's the water's a bit, certainly can do the math, no problem with that. But my opinion, I would make it a provisional item, and then if it sounds good, go with it. If it doesn't sound good, then we can always take it out and do it ourselves. And certainly we'll have the numbers to deal with it. We can go out and figure it out too.
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you on making the genset provisional. It kind of sets up two scenarios. If you don't buy the automatic, you'll need manual switches. If you buy the automatic, you need the automatic switches. So I'll leave it up to your electrical engineering expertise to figure out which way to go. But we do have time, but eventually you have to have room for it, and the switch is not as simple as just buying a genset, and then all of a sudden you got to buy a genset and you got to put the automatic startups in. So you got to keep that in mind when we do so. So two of the challenges I see going forward is the ECA, the environmental compliance approval, and our hookup with Hydro One. How do you envision getting all that done? And my talks with the Swanks, they'd like to see this operational by September, October.
Well, once we've solidified our electrical engineer to speak on Hydro. Our electrical engineer has already been in touch with Hydro. We've already had discussions on how we're going to service it, where the servicing is going to come from. So I don't see the Hydro as a potential delay. I mean, they're definitely they move at a certain pace, Hydro does, but we're going to engage them very early, and they're aware of the project already. So that one I don't see as a risk. The ECA are as soon as we've gotten direction from council on what we're designing, like what catchments we're designing for, and the like, we're going to have our drawings wrapped up and an ECA application submitted. So that's probably going to happen in the next week or two, I'd say, Francois. I see a thumbs up from Francois. So yeah, that's correct. In the next week or two, that we'd have the ECA application out. It's already done, but we have to make some changes now based on council direction. So we'll get that out as early as we can, and then, like I stated previously to Deputy Mayor Gardner, we will then finish the tender drawings, tender the package, and there is a long lead time for majority of the equipment that we're talking about here. So in a perfect world, that EC application will come in before we actually start getting anything in the ground. And then if that's not, it's something that we'll go back to staff on to see whether they want to proceed with the risk of potential impacts, or whether they want to delay things a little bit until we get the EC application in hand.
Okay. Standard practice with MOECCP that they'll work. I know that they're in some sort of delay mode now. A, because they're busy, and B, because they're dealing with COVID issues and working away from their job sites. But has there been occasions where you've had preliminary discussions, and to me this is a fairly straightforward project, and they would allow us to continue on and get things started while they're still reviewing stuff? Or are they sticklers and they want to say this, do not make any holes in the ground before we give you the stamp of approval? That's
every time that we've had this discussion with the ministry, that is exactly what the direction is that we're provided. Don't start until we give you approval.
Okay, so I guess we're taking a risk, but we got to get this thing going. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So I think, in my opinion, if we do those provisional items and see how they come back with, and then, as much as the costs have gone up, it's not a total surprise. I think the first number is always, that was a shock. And I think maybe, had we known a bit earlier, it would have helped a bit, but I do appreciate all the work you did. And I think every once in a while, we all dream for the future and trying to make it as large as possible. And I think that's the right way of looking at life. However, in this circumstance, it's beyond what South Dundas and the Dutch Meadows development can afford, because it's still money in, money out. As council's aware, we had imposed a larger sewer connection fee beginning on all properties when we started going down this road, mainly to capture enough money to pay for on this station at Dutch Meadows. Doing the math now, the math doesn't work anymore. However, I've had preliminary discussions with the Swanks on stepping up the connection fee if necessary once we figure out the real costs of the project. The preliminary costs are certainly higher than we can handle, and I think we're now in a ballpark that between the developer and ourselves, we can come up with a solution that I would say comes close to where we need to go and in lines with the vision we had on costing originally at the original dollars. So
Yeah.
that's something we'll work on once we figure it totally out, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Anything further from any member of council or staff?
Go ahead.
Okay, I got Shannon and Dennis. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to, for you were saying earlier that the Morrisburg pumping station, we don't have a shelter there. We did put a shelter in about 10 years ago. The original drawings, they didn't have a shelter over top of the pumping station, and then we just built there was a lean-to that got built over top of the pumping station at the main facility. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, fair enough. Apparently, you've proved to us that it can be done after if necessary.
That's right.
And you never know, say at first, probably, once the bug's all out of it, it may be something you never look at except once a year to make sure that everything's still working fine. So I understand the need for a shelter, but the need and cost and the amount you need it for don't all line up with other options. So
No, that's correct.
Shannon?
Thank you.
Yep, just for clarification, just so I can provide direction to EVB. So council's agreeable to the amendments that were made from the original design to now. We're going to have the generator and the water connection as a provisional. We're also removing the rain shelter or whatever that was included as the estimate. Is that everything captured in there?
Council all good with that? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so we're good.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay, so with that, I understand there's a resolution that council will pass today to go ahead with the tender process. So Deputy Clerk, please.
Thank you, Mayor Belvones. Just one question of clarification prior to the resolution being read in. The provisional item, are we including the metering chamber as a provisional item?
We definitely can include it as a provisional item if we get really lucky and if council's direction is to spend $1.1 million maximum, and if we get a great tender estimate, we're able to include the metering chamber, then we can do so. Council's direction is, if we can do it for $1,050,000 and save a metering chamber, then that's what I want to do. I guess that's the answer we need.
Okay, is any member of council, like the recommendation that EVB had gave us, made that a provisional item? Any issues with keeping that as provisional item? Councilor Wells, with your hand up.
Well, I'm just looking at page 6 here. So everything in extras are going to be a provisional items on this tender process. Correct, Josh?
Actually, Councilor Wells, the intent was those extras are just things that we showed as costing. The actual intent was just to include the generator as provisional only. That's really what I was expecting. Although if I would like to include if council's comfortable with spending up to the 1.1 million, I'd like to include the metering chamber as provisional, because I do think it's something that's good to have at the station, but it's really at council's direction whether or not we include that as provisional or
not. Okay then, and like in the tender process, it's going to be the time for the shoring process and all that. So I think, everything else looks good to me for the resolution. Thanks.
Okay, so just to go, I know Deputy Clerk is probably generating the resolution. The rain shelter's out. Jen said is provisional, correct? The water main is provisional. And then the metering chamber is provisional. You know,
I do have something prepared.
$1.1 million. I want to say I got $1 million, and we'll see where we go from there. How's that? You can capture that, Deputy Clerk?
I can, yeah. I do have something prepared if council wish to hear it.
Yes, please.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Wells. The council directs staff to proceed with the Dutch Meadows pumping station as outlined by the EVB technical memorandum dated January 22nd, 2021, and that the tender documents are created to make the supply of the metering chamber, 25 kilowatt backup generator with ATS, and the underground water main as provisional items, and the removal of the rain shelter.
Okay. Does that sound all good to council? Okay, so any further debate on the resolution itself? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the resolution? Hands up. Those opposed, if any, motion carries. So Josh Francois, you have your work cut out for you. I do appreciate this meeting and the work you've done with staff to come up with a more palatable solution. You know, it's something that we have committed to. It's something we want to see done in partnership with the Swanks. The work has started already, and I think it's starting to generate some excitement in South Dundas that a major housing development is occurring here in the village of Morrisburg. And we want to work with them, we want to work with you and staff to come up with a solution that works for all of us. So, once again, thanks for doing the work you did, and we're looking forward to see the results. And as I said, put it on the top of the pile, not in the bottom, please.
Yep, fair enough. Sure. Definitely.
Okay, so with that, I will call anything. There's nothing further. Then I will call for the adjournment resolution, please. Deputy Clerk?
Yep. Yes, sir. Moved by Councillor Mellon, seconded by Councillor Wells, that council adjourned to meet again at the call of the chair.
All heard the motion. Those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. So thank you very much to everyone, the staff, Josh Francois, council, and thanks for those who are participating live this morning.